You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Listening to the Bells of Liberty podcast, where freedom rings and the sassiness stings. Stay tuned for a little bit of sassy freedom. Hello, you're listening to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight we've got lots to discuss because this week has certainly been anything but uneventful and hasn't left us short of things to talk about by any means. Has the progressive movement finally begun to feel the pain of all its whining and demands for more diversity in Hollywood? Marvel, by its own admission, has. And are they starting to learn a valuable lesson and profit-lessening lesson? Or will they simply blame those of us with sense, or better yet, Trump? Also, the little thought of notion that a man might actually care that his unborn child is aborted without his consent, and why aren't there more protections and legal supports for men who want to keep their babies, even if the mother does not? Sammy will be leading a special segment on our constitutorial focusing on the War Powers Act now that Trump has ordered airstrikes on Syria following the brutal gas attacks on civilians this past week. And all topped with a cherry known as Ring the Bell, where we all get to share a story that made us roll our eyes and scream a little. So, on with the show. Okay, so I'm a super, super huge superhero fan. And I'm not ashamed to say that I love Marvel movies. I'm a big Avengers fan. As most of you who have listened to our show before might know, I am unashamedly in love with Captain America, even though Chris Evans is a massive progressive douche. And it breaks my heart a little bit every time he opens his mouth or tweets something, but I can always go back to watching the Captain America movies and pretending that's who he is in real life. So, anyway... recently an article came out from Heat Street that was quoting a Marvel executive named David Gabriel that claimed that forced diversity in comics is responsible for their most recent slump. Of course, if you go to the Washington Post, they would disagree and say, oh, no, it has nothing to do with diversity. It has everything to do with the fact that Marvel only produces 400 to 600,000 copies of comics every year, and therefore there isn't enough to go around. So it has nothing to do with diversity. It has to do with limited product. I think that's probably false. But it seems in the most recent months, between the months of October and February of 2016 and 2017, there was a 37% market share, which was a drop of 4.8% compared to the same months in 2015 to 2016. And in comparison, DC Comics have actually seen a 4% increase during those same months. But again, Washington Post says that all has to do with the fact that they don't produce a lot of comics every year. So that's the only reason why. I think that's false. I think I've said that. I still think it's false.
It just doesn't make sense with math-wise. Like, if you are only producing 400,000 and you sell 100% of your stuff, it would make sense that you would expect those numbers, and it wouldn't be a surprise, and you wouldn't have to try and figure out the reason for the slump.
Right, and then why would your own executive come out and say, yeah, it's probably because of that whole diversity thing? Okay, so which one is it? I don't know. The Washington Post is trying to clean up Marvel's mess. I don't know. Marvel, as anyone who ever watches anything Marvel-related or Twitter or whatever, has always been very, very vocal about politics and ideology. Jon Favreau, who directed several of the Iron Man movies, and I think is now actually a Marvel executive. Joss Whedon, for instance, they've all been very open about how much they detest conservative values and hating Republicans. Joss, especially in his latest bout of insanity, just commented that he feels that Trump is going to kill all the gay people. He's going to kill all the gay people, guys. So, which is funny considering this is the first Republican president who has come in with an openly supportive stance for gay rights. So I don't know where he's pulling this out of other than his butt, and that he doesn't quite understand that if you actually listened to Trump, I know it's hard, but if you actually listen to him, he doesn't actually care if you're gay. So Joss, again, has also suggested some rather horrific things regarding Republicans. Some of you might remember his Twitter rant against Paul Ryan and how he desperately wished for him to be raped by a rhino. He thought that was pretty funny. Some of us thought maybe he should go back on his medication. But
a higher dose, too.
Yes, I agree with that. But I think that what we're running into is that I think we're all tired of politics being shoved down our throat. This isn't necessarily Marvel, but this is a personal anecdote, I guess, of running into this. Is my family, my parents used to be big fans of the new show Designated Survivor with Kiefer Sutherland. I have only seen a couple episodes of it, so I haven't really been as invested in it. It's only 14 episodes in, and already they're pushing the SJW agenda with gun control, gay rights. Oh, should we talk about climate change? What should we do in our first 100 days? All the things that progressives would do. And we're all just supposed to sit and be like, oh, it's just entertainment. So I think we're all feeling that constant pressure of we can't just go to a movie to be entertained. We have to go to a movie to be educated. We have to be told what we should be believing. We have to have it shoved down our throats. Every little thing that social justice warriors seem to support. Yes, and I think that's what's even worse, because I was just asking about this with this Designated Survivor thing. Again, not Marvel, but a similar situation is we watched, my family and I, like all 10 million seasons of West Wing. And that was obviously a very liberal show, but I never hated it so much that I had to shut an episode off in the middle of it. We couldn't even get through last night's episode because it was just like bam, 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 bam. All the things conservatives support, that's bad. Progressives, you know that stuff, that's okay. So we couldn't even get through the first 15, 20 minutes of the show before we were like, okay, let's go back to watching something else, because this is, House Hunters. It's the same episode we've seen 15 times, but at least we're not getting told what we have to believe.
The shows that I enjoy, like what you're talking about, like what probably was like for you with West Wing, was that it felt natural and organic. Like you would expect that level of that kind of interaction in real life. That's fine. When you go and it's just this constant barrage of and it's so blatant and open and hostile, you're just like, why? And then you get accused of being jerks because you're like, you don't like the show. Like, well, it's not. I just wish that the shoe could be on the other foot for a little while, and just for them to constantly feel like everything they do, they have to be defensive about, and they're not allowed to have opinions that are not part of the group think. And yeah, so I mean, I totally get though about the shows that just kind of bring it in kind of an organic way where you would expect that to happen in real life for you. It's a fine. That just feels like real.
Right. And I think what I'm running into with my issues with Marvel is that nothing is sacred. And I find it odd that Joss Whedon would continue, if I could speak English today, Joss Whedon would continue to work for Marvel after he was essentially scared off Twitter after his last directing dance with Marvel, because they went after him for being anti-feminist because of character traits, or at least a storyline that he put into the last Avengers movie, Age of Ultron, where Black Widow suggested that she felt like a monster because she was given forced sterilization when she went to assassin school. Essentially what it was is that was their graduation present, was that they were all sterilized. And the point of that is because as an assassin, they don't want them to have anything they would care about more than their mission. So having a child might actually deter them from doing their job. And she felt like she was a monster because that was taken away from her. And all the people who are about choice don't actually seem to
right?
be about choice when
Right.
it comes to having your body disfigured to the point where you can't have a child. Why would she not
Yeah.
potentially want that? Because now she was entering in a relationship with someone where a future might have been possible, which is where this came into, because in the Age of Ultron, the Hulk and Black Widow were becoming a thing before he ran off like a little coward. But she was envisioning a future with him, and neither one of them can have kids, but she felt like something had been taken away from her because she didn't have a choice to do that. She didn't decide she wanted to be sterilized, but all of these feminists went after Joss Whedon because, well, why is it the only thing that matters? Why does it matter? Because that's a pretty personal thing, and someone decided for her that wasn't going to happen, whether she wanted it to or not.
And because it's a character who it mattered to.
Right.
It might not matter to the next person. He could have very easily had 2 assassins and gone through the same thing and have it matter to one person and have it not matter to the other. But the thing is, that was part of the story. It mattered because it did.
Right.
So, I mean, it's something that you would encounter in real life. You might come across a woman who can't have kids and is a little broken up and doesn't feel quite whole without that opportunity. And so should we say, oh, that's not the only thing that matters? Why does it have to matter to you? Or should we be able to look at, compassionately at that person and say, I'm so sorry that you're going through this. Mm-hmm. But the feminist response is, it shouldn't matter.
It shouldn't matter. It's, why do you care about her uterus so much? Well, maybe because I like people actually choosing their fate rather than someone else choosing it for them. Kind of how I feel about babies. I guess, again, with the rest of this, it's just like Marvel has been moving from what they used to do, which is they might have a male character that's very popular, like, say, Hulk or Spider-Man or Batman in DC Comics and all of that. And rather than create an entirely new character, they would create the female version of it. So like She-Hulk or Batgirl or, someone who has pretty much the same powers.
It's patronizing.
Right, which I think is what they were trying to move away from. But I guess how they took that is okay, now we just have to completely change male characters into female characters. Look at this gender bend we did. We turned Thor into a woman. So it's the same character with the same, with the same character traits, the same backstory, all of it, but now they have boobs. And apparently that makes them woke, I guess.
Well, and it's also, I feel like it's very sexist that, like, a lot of the storylines that they do give to their female superheroes deal with the classic SJW storylines. Why can't they go be badass and just be, door kickers? Why do they have to address issues such as choice or gay rights or all these things? Like, why can't they just save lives?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't understand why these stories always have to be like, well, she was fighting her anxiety, but she became a superhero anyway. Like, okay, that's, how lame is that? I mean, that's like a story you tell a 3-year-old, so, okay, let's do our belly breathing now. Okay, breathe in, breathe out, blow the candle out. Like, it has nothing to do with being a superhero. Like, I understand fighting adversities, and it's not like they can't have their personal flaws, but it's like, why do they have to be so trivial or so unimportant, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it just seems like it's so contrived and it's patronizing, and honestly I just want people to be creative and come up with characters that actually make me want to be a superhero too. So I guess to kind of wrap it up, I'm sick of unnecessary plot twists. I'm sick of gender bending. I just want a character that I can like and not want to punch in the face when I watch them. I want them to leave Captain America the hell alone. He is a beloved symbol of patriotism and American exceptionalism, and lately Marvel has been a jerk and has decided, oh, no, he's not. He's actually a Nazi-supporting member of Hydra. But it's not political, guys. It's not political. It's just a really interesting plot twist. No, it just means you people suck, and you want to ruin all the good things in life, and this is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah, well, and just one more thing quickly. There's like women who are writing these new superhero stories, and I don't know if you guys saw it, but Tampon Girl, have you guys
Wait, what?
Yeah, so this
Gross.
lady, she wrote a book about Tampon Girl and her amazing adventures to try and normalize periods in like other countries around the world.
Is that the one that has
and
like
I'm like, that's gross. That's not a superhero.
Doesn't she have her sidekick like Diva Cup or something? The menstrual cup? Yeah. I saw that too.
Mystery Men.
Oh,
Girl.
as a woman, I apologize to the human race. That should never have ever been created. Ever.
Oh, man.
So that's just nasty.
That's something I heard in passing, and then I was like, nope, don't want to look. I'm good.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we are running into a break, so we're going to leave it here. When we come back, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is dads and abortion. So stay tuned.
Listening to the Bells of Liberty on the Lanterns Radio Network. We just finished up our discussion on Marvel and its suffering from its too much diversity. Usually it's a lack of diversity, but now it's too much. And we are sliding into our next topic, which is a little bit morose. But it is very important to talk about as it's something that's often left behind. We're going to be focusing on dads and who are left behind through abortion and what their rights should and aren't currently. So, Courtney, what do you have to say about that?
Well, first of all, I just want to make this very clear that I don't have the answers on this. I don't have this is how it should be. This really was a conversation that I didn't even realize it needed to be talked about until now because I don't hear anything about this going on. So it actually happened. I think I was looking at a tweet that Planned Parenthood put out, and some random guy had mentioned something about, what about the dads in abortion? And of course, this is a women's issue only, and unless the guy is agreeing with the woman who wants to have an abortion. So therefore, he doesn't get to have a voice unless he's agreeing with her. And so he was immediately piled on by women who were like, I'm not going to be your baby carrier and blah, blah, blah. And it got me thinking, though, just where are the dads in abortion? And are there dads who are in relationships or, their partner got pregnant and then they just decided to break it up, and then the girl was like, well, I think I'll have an abortion. Are there dads who are, or potential dads who are standing on the sidelines going, I kind of would like to have that child, but being denied that? And so I kind of just wanted to see what kind of things we can talk about on along those lines, because I can't imagine being a dad in a situation like that and being in a relationship, and whether you're continuing in the relationship or not, knowing that you have no say whether your child can be murdered or not. So that's just kind of where I just wanted to start the conversation. And the picture that we typically get for reasons why women will have an abortion is because they need to stand on their own. They need to make their own choices, make what's best for them. And, a child doesn't fit into that picture. But what if the conversation included the father of the child saying, hey, do you want to be a single dad? I don't know. And it's it's such a touchy subject, though, because you literally I don't want to say to a woman, you have to carry a child to full term. But at the same time, that is a child who had no say. They were literally brought into the midst of all this, and they had no say whether or not they get to be a part of that. And then you have the dad who, the only person who gets to make a choice in this whole situation is the mom. And I just wonder if that's the right way to handle all that. So,
well, I mean, we've spent decades now telling men they need to shut up and take themselves out of the conversation because it's not their body. And that's ridiculous because it's their child too. And yet whenever a man tries to bring that up, he's immediately shouted down and told, again, he's being oppressive. He wants to force this woman to be a baby carrier. So it's just the way that we've treated men in this conversation, to the point that they either just shrug or they have to stay silent.
Well, as the saying goes, it takes two to tango. But apparently it only takes one to pay child support. So I feel like, Sammy, you're right, is that a lot of it is because we spend a lot of time telling men that they're not necessary. So if it's, you might have helped create the baby, but she don't need no man until it comes to child support, or, if she's the one who has to carry the baby, then he needs to keep his mouth shut. So I look at it as it's a culture problem, because we've spent a lot of time, we haven't, but in general, the culture has spent a lot of time tearing down the notion of a two-parent household, that a woman doesn't need a man in order to raise a successful and, developmentally happy or appropriate, whatever the word is I'm looking for, that they can raise a child on their own. Dad isn't necessary. He literally is just there to provide genetics, and that's it. And we've told them that for so long that now most of them don't care. And that's why we do have so many single moms, because we're a hookup culture. A lot of kids are produced out of situations where you were not in a relationship that was intended to last. It is either a one-night stand, or it was a really short-lived relationship, but it managed to produce some fruit, also known as a baby. But there was never any intention of that relationship becoming permanent. So none of these parents are prepared to take care of a child as a couple, because they don't even really like each other all that much. So I see that in my work every single day, is that a lot of people, I don't want Dad involved. I don't want you contacting him. I don't want him here. I don't want you to ever talk to him or the kid to be involved with him, because I hate his guts, because I knew him for 2.5 seconds and then we ended up having a baby. Some moms, we ask, well, is there anything in the family history that would indicate why this child is developmentally behind? Oh no, I don't know anything about Dad's family. So my point is that because we spend so much time degrading and eroding away a family unit, now it's easy enough for women just to pull the, well, it's my body, you don't get an opinion card. And that's why there are no protections. That's why a lot of, if a woman is trying to get custody of her kid, 9 times out of 10, she's going to get it unless she's done something completely egregious that can't be forgiven. So if a man wants any kind of custody with his kids, he's going to have to deal with either seeing his kids whenever he's told he can, or never seeing them ever again, because the courts are always going to side with the mom, even if the mom isn't necessarily the better choice. So it just is, it is a very unfair system. And I think men, because they have so little to do with the biological process of, actually carrying the baby to term and pushing the baby out when it's time, that it shouldn't matter what their opinion is, and that they shouldn't be having any kind of emotion to it, if you know what I mean. They shouldn't have any feelings about it whatsoever, because they were just there to provide genetics. They weren't there to provide anything else. They don't offer anything to a child, like moral support, love, any of that. And we all know that's not true. I have a perfectly wonderful father that if he hadn't been in my life, I would not be the person I am today. So
I had 2 of my babies at home, and my husband was there with me. He was besides the midwife, he was the most supportive person. Well, he was almost the only other person in the room. But
I was going to say, how many people came to that party?
No. Are you kidding me? This is an introvert city. I wanted to have my firstborn at home because I didn't want to go to a hospital. That's how introverted I am. I'm like, it's perfectly safe. We're doing this. But side note, he was a little worried, didn't accept that. And so we compromised. I said, fine, we'll do this way. And then after my hospital experience, I said, if you want to have any more kids with me, we're doing it my way. So, but it's interesting though. If we looked at it from the situation of there's a mother, there's a father, and there's a child, and who gets custody of the child, I wonder what it would look like even in pregnancy situations. Because if now, like, say you've got a mom that's not sure she wants to be a mom, and you've got a dad that says, I definitely want you to have that child, even if I can't keep it, like, I'll do my best. But I mean, you never know. Like that we write men off.
Yeah, but the problem with that is we can't even agree that the child is a child. We've got enough people complaining that it's just a clump of cells. It's not sentient. It's not a human being. It's not anything. It can't live on its own until it's outside the mother's womb. So it's not a human being until it takes its first breath. So if we can't even agree that the thing that's growing inside of the woman is a baby, then it's hard to be able to support a father using that as a defense when he's trying to get the mother to at least carry it to term so that he can take care of it. I think we're going to run into that. My bigger point, which was kind of my bigger point with is fathers will never get a voice in their unborn child's life if it's always called a clump of cells. When we know full well that clump of cells is going to develop into a child. So anyway, one little side note, though, a little caveat, little thing that kind of made me mad was, just to wrap it up here, rapists, if there is a child born out of rape and the mother keeps the child, the rapist gets to have a say in what, like, he gets to be part of the child's life by law. And I have a lot of strong opinions about that, which would involve the person who did the crime not being very happy with me, but I really wouldn't care. So, well, I mean,
there was a case in 2014, a kid in Arizona. He was actually the victim. He was a victim of statutory rape. The girl got pregnant. She was in her 20s. He was 14. And she waited past the statute of limitations on statutory rape, and then she told him that she had had a baby. They hadn't had no contact in that time. Told him she had a baby, and he was ordered by the courts to pay child support, even though he was a victim of statutory rape.
That is so messed up.
This also happens with gay couples, though. When they, I think a couple that I've seen in the past have been lesbians who have had a child through either surrogacy, or one of them has chosen to carry the baby, and they've gotten a donation from a male friend or from a sperm bank or whatever, and then they've broken up as a couple, and then have gone after the sperm donor to pay child support for the child that he just donated genetic material to and had no intention of being the father of. So, I mean, there's been lots of unfair situations where, it should be pretty clear, okay, that's not his responsibility at this point, because you clearly asked him to do something for you, and he did not want he didn't want to have any financial ties to it, had no intention of being a dad, and that was the end of it, but we still go after them anyway.
For a country that seems to be patriarchy and a male-driven society, men have given up completely on their rights in this arena. Exactly. Just because they've been bullied into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, so like I said, I didn't have all the answers. This isn't like a right or wrong sort of a situation. I mean, I have opinions about it, and I just think that it would be awesome if this was a conversation that could happen on a wider scale, because I think that it's something that needs to happen.
I totally agree that it should be a bigger conversation than it is. Again, we're going to run into a break right now. We're really running against the clock. So, coming back with this week's edition of Constitutorial.
You're listening to the Lanterns Radio Network. We are the network dedicated to empowering the individual, illuminating the truth, defending American exceptionalism, and inspiring future generations. Stay connected and get involved at lanterns.buzz. For great radio, get commentary and news of the day. Lanterns.buzz.
Welcome back to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. This week's constitutorial segment is going to put the brakes on our regular exploration of our founding document to take a look at a hot topic issue that's on everyone's mind and try to give it a little historical and legal background. So, as some of you, I'm sure, have heard this week, President Trump authorized strikes against the Assad regime after it violated international law by deploying chemical weapons against its own citizens. Debate has sprung up in America on the moral and potential economical impacts of Trump's decision, but what we're going to be focusing in on is the legal justification for the strike. So it all started when, well, I don't want to say all started, but Senator Rand Paul has come out saying that Trump's actions in Syria were unconstitutional and because he didn't have congressional backing. Trump's supporters are countering and saying under the War Powers Act of 1973, this gives the president the authority to act first and ask for permission later. So to kind of get into what the War Powers Act says, I wanted to give a little bit of history. And I found all of this really fascinating because it's stuff that we did not learn in my high school history classes. So hopefully this is new for some of you as well. So in 1941, right after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, FDR passed the first War Powers resolution to immediately respond in kind to the Japanese. And then 3 months later, the second War Powers resolution was passed, which ended up leading to the internment of Japanese Americans because it rescinded the confidentiality of the census. So the FBI was able to track down all the persons living in the United States who were of Japanese descent. So already not a great track record for the War Powers Act. Then following FDR, Presidents Truman, Kennedy, and Lyndon Baines Johnson all got us entangled in conflicts that were never declared wars. So we're talking the Korean conflict. Technically, Vietnam was not a war. So the Congress, in retaliation of that, wrote what we now know as the War Powers Act. And it was an attempt to kind of hinder presidents from going ahead of the Congress and saying that they need to have the explicit consent of the Congress unless there is an imminent or attack or threat. And if there is an imminent attack or threat, they must address Congress within 48 hours of said strike. And then Congress gets 60 days to vote and see if further action is substantiated or justified. So this was in 1973, and President Nixon vetoed the bill, saying that it gave too much power to Congress and that he believed that the president needed to have some sort of war power to be able to protect the nation on a moment's notice.
Oh, that's shocking. So shocking.
Yeah. Right? So Nixon vetoed it, but so it got kicked back into the Congress, and they had the 2/3 majority to overrule the veto, and it became law on November 7th of 1973. And although their purpose was to try and contain the president, I feel like since then the presidents have used it more as a justification to act first and ask for permission later. We saw it under the Bush administration. We saw it under the Obama administration. So it's not just a Republican war hawk mentality to go against the Congress and do what they want and then cite the War Powers Act.
Yeah.
So as this is our segment on the Constitution, I wanted to touch on the different clauses throughout the Constitution that are being discussed on the constitutionality of the War Powers Act. And Senator Rand Paul saying that it's not constitutional. So, in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, the Constitution states that the Congress holds the power to declare war. And some who are kind of leaning more towards the president having more powers than he should or than he does will argue that the framers were already aware that there were forms of quote unquote undeclared wars. So it perhaps did not strictly prohibit the president from taking any military action. And then in Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, it again addresses the use of force, and it says it should not go forward without the consent of Congress unless there is imminent danger. And that is the clause that Senator Rand Paul is referring to when he's saying there was no imminent danger, there was no threat against the United States, there was no reason that President Trump couldn't come to the Congress and let us discuss the ramifications and the benefits of doing such an action.
Okay.
And then again, there's Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution that outlines that the president is commander-in-chief. And some people believe that even though it's unstated, it entitles the president to quote-unquote special emergency powers.
Oh, gosh.
Well, here's the thing. President Lincoln thought that he had special powers when he suspended habeas corpus in the Civil War.
Yeah. I remember about that.
Right. And then, so that actually got kicked to the court, and it said that they will only recognize the right of the executive branch to use emergency powers if the Congress has granted such powers to the president. So meaning the president can't just say, I have special powers. It has to be the Congress passing a law that says, yes, indeed, you do have these powers.
I'm magical unicorn. I have these powers. Trust me.
Right. And so I think we've talked about in our last couple constitutorials about the concept of originalism and reading the documents as they were written and as they were intended. So I think it's worth noting that in 2003, a court case was taken against President Bush when he wanted to invade Iraq. They were saying it was unconstitutional, and that case was thrown out because of its failure to raise a, quote, sufficiently clear constitutional issue. So that case, they said they didn't have the grounds to argue it in a higher court. And it's also worth noting that we've had examples, the Korean conflict, the Vietnam War, the Gulf Wars, which weren't technically wars, but we all call them wars, so excuse me. But the Supreme Court has never intervened to stop a war that a president has started without congressional authorization. So that's a little bit of the constitutionality questions that have been raised on Trump's strike against Syria. And the thing is, for me at least, is Trump's action a declaration of war? Does he have further intents? Which I don't know that answer. I feel like I can't predict Trump one way or the other.
Does he know the answer? I don't know if he knows the answer.
Right. So it's kind of I do tend to agree with Senator Rand Paul that it would be nice if Trump did go within these 48 hours, go to Congress and explain his actions and why he did them. And then the Congress has 60 days to talk about whether or not further action is needed or beneficial to the American people.
I think that would be awesome if he at least followed up with that.
But
I kind of got the
does
impression
anyone
that he
think
took
that
everybody off
Trump
guard.
actually knows that? Like, I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know that he's ever read any of the Constitution, much less has any idea what this is, because I'm pretty sure Trump just thinks, well, I'm the president, so I can blow up whoever I want.
Thanks, Jane. Now I have this terribly scary thought. I'm like, we probably have a
you're just now thinking this?
The White House.
Where have you been for the last year?
I'm like imagining it fully, I guess, maybe.
Oh, is it
thinking,
fully realized now that he actually has the White House?
Well, I'm curled up in a little ball and I'm rocking myself back and forth,
okay,
so it's becoming fully realized
I'm
now.
so sorry to have traumatized you, but this is something I was thinking about as soon as the man put his hat in the ring. So I feel like he doesn't actually know this, and if anyone is directing him into thinking that this is okay, then they probably haven't fully educated him on this. Because how many people actually know about this? I certainly didn't. Sammy, you said you didn't, so it's not like something that's taught in your everyday history, much less government, government high school government class or anything like that. So I don't know. I'm a little I don't know. I don't know that I believe that he actually knows that. So I don't expect him to come to Congress at all, because I don't think he needs to. He thinks he needs to explain himself, much less thinks that he would have to. But I'm definitely of the belief that this definitely needs to go through Congress no matter what. So something like this needs to go away, because this is not a just he gets to make the decision and go.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and here's the interesting thing that I was reading too. In 2015. One of America's favorite people, John McCain, teamed up with Tim Kaine, and they tried to amend the War Powers Act and make it a little more clear about the president, because at the time, conservatives were screaming about Obama taking actions in Yemen, his actions in Libya, his initial non-action action in Syria. So this stuff has been going on for years, and I appreciate that some congressmen have been consistent, and now that their guy is in, not necessarily their guy, but someone from the conservative side is in office, they're not just saying, oh yeah, it's fine. They're actually saying, no, doesn't matter who's in office, this is not okay.
Let's put air quotes around conservative when you talk about Trump, though, okay?
Well, I want
to see lots of air quotes.
Yeah, let's just be clear. He's not actually in the club, okay, guys? He has not paid his conservative fees. He doesn't have the jacket. We have not brought him cookies. He is not part of the team. So let's just be clear about that, okay?
Well, and the other interesting thing is that our Constitution and our War Powers Act aside, this involves a lot of international law as well. So it's just a murky situation. I know lots of people who are uneasy about the decision, but also some people who are excited that when Trump says he's going to do something, he does it. So it's such a complex issue, and I don't think that we've laid out here anything that people can definitively take away from it as, yes, this is right or this is wrong. Because even the best scholars on either side of the issue are still debating it. So I just want people to understand. I want people to think for themselves with this information, because
that's asking a lot, Sammy. I'm sorry.
I know, and unfortunately, we're running into another break, so we got to go. We're going to come back with Ring the Bell. Welcome back to the Bells of Liberty on Lanterns Radio Network. We are closing out the show with our favorite segment, Ring the Bell. This is our favorite segment of the night, where we get to talk about topics that really got us riled up. So we're going to start off with Jaina.
Okay, so the story I ran into that made me kind of roll my eyes quite a lot, actually, was the story that I read on the Libertarian Republic about a TSA agent that was fired after missing a loaded gun in a carry-on bag. Oh, I have so many words. So many words. I think it's pretty fair to say that I've been very vocal about my hatred of the TSA in either past shows or just on social media in general. I have been felt up on many occasions by the TSA. I have proven myself not a terrorist on many occasions, and yet it still never fails that every time I have to go through security, someone gets to cop a feel, and I'm not a fan. So, the story I read about this is this woman in Atlanta, out of Hoover, Alabama, discovered that she had a handgun in her checked purse for, discovered the handgun as she checked her purse for her passport while at the gate. I will admit I don't know many people who forget that they're packing when they're packing. So I will blame her accordingly for doing that. However, I think this proves pretty easily that the TSA is useless. There's no place for them whatsoever in the Department of Homeland Security. So thank you very much, sir, for missing that.
Well, my friend actually at the SeaTac airport went through, didn't realize she had left her gun in her purse either, and got through TSA just fine. Again, got to the gate, realized the mistake, went to the TSA and said, "Hey guys, you're worthless," and they arrested her.
Yeah, and they did that to this woman too.
Yeah.
This woman, Katrina Jackson, I guess, she did go to them and explained that she had it on her. Her gun, the handbag, and everything was confiscated, and she was arrested, partially because she did have a permit to carry, but for some reason did not have it on her. So, of course, she was arrested for unlawful possession of a handgun. So, I get that she has to face the consequences of carrying without a permit in the first place, and then the point is, though, is that she turned herself in. So I feel like there needs to be some leniency on that. As for the officer who missed it, they said it was an egregious mistake, was unacceptable, and the officer, who was still a probationary employee, was immediately and permanently separated from federal service.
There are companies that exist that go and try to fool the TSA, and they bring items through that are very potentially dangerous and never get stopped. So it's just ridiculous. But speaking of travel, I have some news out of Italy. An Italian high court has ruled that olfactory molestation is a crime. So if you like to eat stinky food, you better not live in Italy. And I like the rule that you cannot rape your neighbor's senses with your stinky things, because, like I've said, I'm from Seattle, where marijuana was legalized. So now everyone's smoking their weed with their windows open, and it stinks. It smells so bad. So I wish that we could get this law passed in America, because it is of the highest importance that I do not have to smell disgusting things.
Okay, well then that means I can have my Great Dane arrested for having the worst farts on the face of the planet. To the point they should probably be bottled and used as some form of chemical weapon, because they're so disgusting they'll wake you up in the middle of the night.
Oh, man.
So, yeah.
I just think it's, the term olfactory molestation, I think, is really funny. And it reminds me of that, the court case where the lesbians and the wedding cake, they claimed, quote unquote, mind rape in their court documents. If mind rape can be a thing in the United States of America, olfactory molestation should be one too.
And this is not uncommon. This legislation.
Reading this article, it's not uncommon for Italians to complain about stinky food smells coming out of their neighbors' apartments. And this couple was fine.
Can we just point out that Italians have made probably the stinkiest food on the planet with as much garlic as they use?
Garlic is a gift to the nose. That is completely consensual all the time.
So I won't be getting a card, like a survey card, to see if I am okay with this. I have consented to the garlic.
Yes.
We might have to take to Twitters and ask. We might have to take to the Twitters and ask if our people think that garlic is okay all the time.
Yeah.
I tend to lean more with you.
This couple was fined $2,000, and their complaint was, my whole apartment became impregnated with the smell of the pasta sauce and the fried fish. It felt like their kitchen was in my flat. So, I mean, there you go. That's perfect grounds.
This would be nice for those the coworkers and stuff who, burn popcorn in the microwave and stuff like that. It'd just be like, arrest this person now. He's an olfactory offender.
This is why I can never be president of the United States, because I would pass laws like this. These would be executive orders.
Well, this one isn't necessarily a smell, but the only thing I could think of as I was reading the title of this article was, "This is not the onion. This is not the onion." Essentially, a young activist wrote #Black Lives Matter for the entire entry on his college acceptance form, and he got in. And so this is an article by Catherine Timpf. She's on Twitter, and I think she's on Greg Gutfield's newest show, his latest one. I forget. I think it's just called Greg Gutfield. Anyway, but she has some really good points in this article, and I have to agree with her. She brought up the point that activism should be about bringing other people to your side. I don't know how scribbling #Black Lives Matter all over your acceptance form is going to actually, how you can count that as activism, because all you're doing is being, divisive. And then she also pointed out he didn't write the words just Black Lives Matter. He wrote #Black Lives Matter, which is connected to a political movement, which people are a little bit confused about. They don't know what the motives are for this movement. So you're not acknowledging that Black Lives Matter. You're acknowledging #Black Lives Matter, which, if you've read some of the stuff that the Black Lives Matter movement have come out with, it's really pretty outrageous. They have some platforms, and I would encourage you to read up on that, because it's enlightening.
But I just want to know if this kid was so confident in his SAT scores and his his GPA, that he's like, I'm going to just do #Black Lives Matter and see where it gets me, or what his motivation was. Because I think any kid who takes college seriously would never write that in their admission essay.
Right. And she did bring up the fact that because she researched him a little bit, and she said that he was in another publication or something as an up-and-coming prodigy. So she says, I don't know, I can't be the one to say that this is why he was accepted, but she kind of got the impression that he was accepted in spite of, but he took it as he was accepted because of his bold activism on his acceptance or his application letter. So anyway,
I wonder if I would have written the #Blue Lives Matter 100 times on my admission essay, if it would have had the same resonance with whoever reviews the essays.
Okay, so we have reached the end of our time. So if you are interested in following us on social media, you can find us on Twitter @Bells of Liberty, on Facebook @The Bells of Liberty. You can find us on Spreaker. If you follow the Lanterns Radio Network on Spreaker, we're actually trying to work on increasing our followers so that potentially we can start getting onto more platforms like iHeartRadio. So if you could follow us there, follow Lanterns Radio Network, you are more than welcome to do that, and we would be truly appreciative. You can also find us on iTunes, Google Play Music, and SoundCloud. And we post all the links to our shows on those social media, so you can find us there at any time, and you can listen to our past shows. That's all we have for tonight. Thanks for stopping by and giving us an hour of your time, and we'll see you next week.
Adios.
Thanks for listening to the Bells of Liberty podcast. Want to listen to more sassy content? All shows are available free on demand on Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play Music. Have something to say? you can find us on Twitter @Bells of Liberty, and also on Facebook, www.facebook.com/The Bells of Liberty. And as always, keep calm and ring on.